And welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, everyone. Today, our topic is the citizen petition for a turf field moratorium. The petition, I think, was filed as by Donna McKenzie as sponsor, but has had strong support from EcoNatick, and we have several speakers this morning to talk to us about that. There have been prior presentations at FinCom and perhaps others places of select board, I think. But we're anxious to hear more. And also, as I think at least one person mentioned, hopefully provide some from feedback for that group as they go forward eventually to town meeting with it. I think I know, Roger, you don't know as many of us, so let's go through and do our brief introductions, just so everybody knows who's here. Carol?
Good morning, Carol Berkowitz. I'm a 50-year plus resident of Natick and live on Lake Cochituate. So I've done a lot of work concerning the lake.
Great. Great. And Jianji, I think you're still listed as iPad on your thing, but
Yes, good morning, everybody. Good to see the group again after my long summer break. My name is Jean Gimonar. I'm 26 plus years of Natick, residence of Natick.
thanks. Carrie?
Hi, good morning. Former town meeting member, keep Natick beautiful, renewable Natick, what's the other thing? Repair Cafe, and a few other things here. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Hey, team.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. Sally?
Good morning. I'm Sally Hopkins, and I've only been here a little while, 8 years, but I enjoy Natick, and I'm so glad to see Martin this morning. I've been thinking a lot about you, Martin. And, today is National Coffee Day, and this is for coffee with a purpose, I think, and people drink about 2.5 cups average in America.
Thankful for that information. All right. Cindy?
Good morning. I'm Cindy Bates, non-coffee drinker, five years this fall in Natick. I'm a trail steward. I pick up for Keep Natick Beautiful, and I sing in sound and spirit. Thank you for coming today.
Great. Chris Gentry?
Still getting settled.
Yeah,
I'm Chris Gentry, a Natick resident for about 25 years now, and haven't seen you guys in a while, but trying to get back into it again.
that's good to see you, Chris. Brinley?
Good morning. Burnley, I've been here about 25-ish years. I'm a town meeting member. I have one kid, as you know, still in the schools who is around the turf fields quite a bit on the track. And I had another kid who is in college now who was also all the way through. Plus my kid went through Kennedy with the turf fields. I love EcoNatick. I was on the recycling committee for a really long time. So I'm really glad you guys are here today. Thanks.
Thanks, Brinley. Bev, are you there at the computer?
Yeah. Sorry. I'm not going to put the video on just because I just got back from cataract surgery and I got a thing over my eye. So, but Martin's wife and we've lived in, he grew up in Natick, but we moved back here about 30 years ago. And we're both on town meeting. And then we've been doing some things with EcoNatick for a while and so appreciate what they're doing. So thank you.
Great, Bev. And Martin, I skipped over you, in deference to your voice, but
I don't know how it is at the moment. Maybe you can understand a bit.
Yes, yeah.
I'll try to be brief. I'm going to go through some medical stuff later. I'm going to leave early, but Yeah, we had this presentation. I am chair of the Open Space Advisory Committee, and we had the same presentation to our committee and the Concom 2 weeks ago. There are a few things I wanted to say at that point I didn't get a chance to say. I maybe not have a chance right now either, but our committee actually has been involved in this issue for almost 20 years since the proposal for the first turf field at Cole School. And I think at that point we made a positive recommendation. We thought that turf fields were the be all and end all and the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I think we've learned since then. So I think it's important that our committee, when we get a chance, come up with a more updated recommendation, a more uh, current recommendation, and one that's going to look forward to some of the big issues that we didn't know about last time.
Thank you for the historical context. I did not know that. And it is great to hear your voice. So let's see. And then Sarah,
Hi, I'm Sarah Hanna. I think you know me, Roger, since you've been helping out with our heat pump coaching issues. I'd really like to echo what Martin just said. I think I remember that first discussion at town meeting, and I'm pretty sure I voted in favor of it. As at the time, it did seem like kind of an answer to a prayer for a town that was short on fields with more and more kids wanting to play sports. So, also very interested in this issue and looking forward to hearing the presentation. I think I heard this, but maybe this is the same one that was at FinCom. I'm not sure. It was off screen until just now, but looking forward to it.
So I had skipped over all of the folks that I think will be speaking to us. So, Roger and Rick and Donna and Tien. I will just say one other logistical note. Sarah and I have to leave for an appointment by 11:15 at the latest. So and I'm doing the recording of this session, so we will have to draw the meeting officially or formally to a close by 10:45 at the latest. But with that,
Did I hear Bev had cataract surgery?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bev, I had cataract surgery this month too, so
Yeah.
I know what you're going through.
All right. And I see Tom just joined us. Good morning, Tom. Great. So let me turn it over collectively to the four of you. However you want to present. I know at least one of you wants to share the screen, if not more. So go take it away.
Thank you so much. And you know me, it's Donna. And I'm kind of like in cahoots a little bit with Cindy Bates because I don't drink coffee, I drink tea. And we also both went to Smith, and maybe it was all those Friday afternoon teas as undergraduates that cultivated a proper sense of tea drinking on a regular basis. But it's a pleasure to be here. I really enjoy this group a lot. And I know, are looking forward to all of your comments and suggestions and thoughts as we move this forward. And we have 2 more meetings today, so we really do appreciate your thoughts on this. And I'm going to vary this a little bit from what I said at the FinCom meeting, but again, we are presenting Article 33 for consideration at the fall annual town meeting, which at this point is a 3-year advisory. It's an advisory for a 3-year moratorium on artificial turf fields. I think it's a conservative and a very reasonable approach, and it's premised on strong concern for the health of our children, the community, and environment. It really impacts the well-being of the entire town. And what we want and what we hope to do by this advisory is to inspire a town-wide conversation. The article was referred, when it was last brought up by Rick Devereaux, it was referred to Select Board, School Committee, and the Board of Health. Curiously, when we look back on it, the Parks and Recs department was missing from that recommendation. So that's one conversation partner. We have talked to them. But we really feel strongly it's a town-wide issue. And maybe Tian, you can put up our graphic.
I can do that.
Okay.
Here. take a minute to share screen and we'll get it going. Okay. And there we go. Okay, it's coming here. There we go.
And let me say that our team consists of Dr. Roger Luckman, who also has a Master of Public Health and is a retired medical school professor for UMass. And when you think about it, this town has amazing resources, and he worked for the Sustainability Committee for a long time. And we also have Tien Lum, who is the parent of a Natick High School graduate and who is an entrepreneur and a computer expert. Um, and we also have Rick Devereaux, who not only has a master's in education, but is himself an athlete and has coached numerous teams and knows different kinds of fields really well. So we really have an amazing group of people. And how did I get involved? This is my first citizen petition, and I got involved because I just wanted to make this happen. And I was frustrated, and I watched the conversation over the past year, and I just thought, let's see if we can make this happen. And on this slide, we have basically, we are concerned again about health concerns, cost, and environment. I'm going to let Dr. Luckman speak to that. He's got a very good and very brief slideshow. And what I want to stress, and I hope you take from what I'm saying, is that we need a town-wide conversation that includes both health and environmental experts, because these fields involve more than just the athletic department or just the school department. And we don't want to make a mistake. And we have the luxury of time right now because there will not be a request for a turf field on the 27 budget, as I understand. So we can actually get out in front of this and inspire a conversation before it's on the table when a lot of work has already been done. So let me hand it off to Dr. Luckman.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Very well said. These are kind of the key issues. I'm going to focus on the health concerns and a little bit on the environment. And start off just by, for folks who have not been out on an artificial turf field in recent months, this is what it looks like. This is what it's made of. The stuff that we're most concerned about now are these plastic, so-called grass fibers of nylon or polypropylene. It's all plastic. They may be coated with and contain PFAS, those are the forever chemicals. We all know that EPA says no safe exposure to those, and some other chemicals that are toxic, phthalates, and sometimes lead and other metals. And then you've got a backing layer that's also made of the same stuff. The blades are a problem because they break down and they're swept off the field. The backing perhaps less so. Then we have this infill, which you may have heard a lot about, big debate about crumb rubber, which is used in at least one of our fields and has basically it's chopped up tires that have been on the road exposed to all kinds of stuff for years before they get chopped up and put into here. There's been a lot of discussion about that. We're not going to go into that in great detail. There are alternative fills, and we have that one alternative fill at one of our fields as well. So some of that can perhaps be dealt with more expeditiously than we can deal with the blades. And then we have these padding layers and a drainage layer. So this is what our concern is, that these grass plastic blades, they break down. Sunlight weakens them. It destroys their integrity. And then, of course, kids playing on this with cleats and all of the physical impact on the blades gradually starts breaking them down, breaking them off. Then come wind, come water, come rain, or come people with shoes dragging this stuff off. The data that we have is that about 0.5 up to 8% of the blades are lost annually. So we know these are coming off the field. So that's 200 to 3,200 pounds per field per year of these little pieces. You can see in the bottom left there, they can be of all different sizes. ultimately, as they move through the environment, they break down to the much smaller particles on the right that we call microplastic. And they also pick up a lot of other toxins wherever they're going in the environment, away from the field, on the roads and elsewhere. They may pick up other toxic materials.
Could I
So,
just ask,
yes,
do you folks want questions as you go along,
I'm
or would
happy
you
to take.
prefer to hold them till the end?
I guess I would say it's okay to, if you have a question that's pertinent on a slide to clear something up, definitely let's go with that. Not get in extended conversation, but definitely clarification questions are welcome.
Okay, I had two so far, and feel
Yeah,
free to
go for
defer
it.
both of them if you'd like.
Yeah.
One, I think on the previous slide, in terms of the makeup of the field, most of the areas said this layer may contain such and such, or it leads to the question, are there variations in turf fields? Are there safer ones and less safe ones to consider? That was question one. And question two, and seems like a very wide range from 0.5 to 8% of fibers lost. I would assume it's based on hours of use per time period or something. And I'm just curious whether there's any factual data for fields in Natick and the amount of
Yeah.
hours per use that
Yeah.
might be expected, where on that scale you'd be. But again, you can defer both of those.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very hard to predict
Yeah.
where we stand on that scale. I suspect probably towards the lower end, most likely.
Mhm.
And it has to do with sun exposure. So, how much sun that we have, kind of
Mm.
that's breaking down the blades, and also you're right, the playable hours and the type of impact.
Mm.
Some kids playing tag on the field in sneakers is going to cause much less damage than a whole football team in cleats kind of running across there for hours.
I'm sure it
Uh,
also is dependent on how old the field is. When it's new and sturdy, you're
yeah.
probably going to be at the lower end, and as it gets older and the sun has been working on these blades and so forth, I would guess that the deterioration rate would increase.
And I see Cindy's got her hand up as well.
Okay.
Yeah, you showed the picture to the right with the magnifying glass.
Mhm.
Um, um, you said eventually the blades would degrade to microplastic, and mm, just I guess a comment that it doesn't look like the blades, and I thought that microplastics were smaller than what you might see like that in a magnifying glass. So I don't know, maybe just this is just more feedback for like your audience to,
Sure.
because it's a little
Sure.
bit of a leap to see all those bright colors.
Yeah, they weren't there before, right? It's a better picture. Yeah, microplastics are zero point 0.5 millimeters
Okay.
or less. And
Okay.
then there are very, very tiny ones that are even less than that,
Okay.
sort of micrometer. And I should probably have a little something to let people know what 0.5 millimeters is,
Yeah,
or
like a little
I'm
scale.
sorry, what 5 millimeters is, and a little kind
Yeah.
of scale compared to an inch or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be helpful on both of those slides.
Yeah, we can do
Pictures.
that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So, so how much of this is getting out into the environment, and what do we know? A Toronto study where they you made some estimates from all of their artificial turf fields in 2020. They estimated about 237 tons of microplastic coming off the fields. Um, and two other big sources of microplastics are actually from laundering synthetic fabric clothing and car tires, but in this particular case, the artificial turf fields won out more than those two major contributors to microplastics in the environment. And probably easier to not put in an artificial turf field than get rid of all your polyester clothing and take the tires off all the cars. I think that could be hard. So there's a rationale for saying, well, we can do something about artificial turf fields. In a Barcelona study, they found that 15% of all of the ocean plastic pollution off the coast was from artificial turf fields. So when you have a lot of fields, there's a lot of this stuff that's coming off. So I mentioned there are other sources of microplastic. Paint is actually one, the polyester synthetic clothing, tires, and then obviously plastic bottles and other containers that are left out to degrade in the sun and break down over time, contributing to microplastics. So we're not saying that artificial turf is the only one, but it appears to be, depending on how many fields you have, a very significant one and one that we can do something about. So they break down over time, pick up all these harmful chemicals. I think the United Nations estimates there's about 2.7 million tons worldwide in 2020 around the world from all sources of microplastic. So they end up in the air. So once they break down to very small particles, they can become airborne. They end up in waterways, in our drinking water, uh, down into the ocean. They end up in the soil, and actually they can be taken up by plants, and we can kind of chew on them that way. On the footwear and clothing coming off the field and spread into the home, and they've been found in the air in homes, in various places as well. So the stuff gets out there in the environment many different ways. So here's what's kind of new and coming into the news, and one of the main reasons for us kind of taking this up right now is that we now know that microplastic has been found in every organ in the body and many bodily fluids, found in the placenta, and appears to actually be passed to newborns in the womb. So we have babies are born with their first dose of plastic already inside, in breast milk as well. And the studies I've looked at, every time they look for this, they find it in about every body every cadaver that they're dissecting. The brain stuff is relatively new, apparently. So we've got it in all of our organs, and you can see how does it get in. You can see through inhalation, ingestion. Some people think it's possible with the very smaller particles that you can get it in through the skin. And we breathe it in through the air. Our water and our beverages may contain it. Obviously, if you're drinking out of a plastic bottle, the plastic in that bottle itself over time may be breaking down, and that's another source of microplastic. It's in the dust that blows around, and it's in on our parks, and it's in our fields. So some people have tried to estimate how many particles we take in a given year. The average person in the United States, I'd say maybe 39,000 to 52,000 particles a year entering our bodies.
Thanks. I
So
see Tom's got his hand up too. Tom.
Yeah. Hi. Gillette Stadium has field turf. Is that the same kind of material that we're talking about?
Well, if it's artificial turf, it's going to be at least very similar. There are some different types of artificial turf, different heights of blades, and there's some new stuff coming on the market, but it's probably not that. So most likely, if it's artificial, it's similar to what we're talking about.
So in other words, the Patriots are maybe winning a game that we're losing on the environment.
Potentially. Now, with with the Patriots, so the question is how much of that stuff is contained within the stadium, and I don't know. Clearly it's a little easier for this stuff to flow off a field that isn't surrounded by bleachers and big walls. But so every field's different in terms of the loss. But yes, that's correct. They're not doing the environment any favor by playing on artificial turf. So the question is, so what? We have plastic in our bodies. Maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it's even a good thing. Maybe we'll live longer with slightly plasticized. But so far that does not appear to be the case. So to date, we have many, probably in the hundreds of studies of the lab animals and human cells, human organ tissue, and even human system simulations looking for the impact of various amounts of microplastic. And what all of these studies have found is that there are a wide variety of potential pathologic processes that are set off by the microplastic. And to the right, you'll see just as an example, fish exposed to microplastics have this range of toxic effects from a journal article, alteration to their immune and antioxidant and hematologic indices. So that's affecting their blood, affecting some of the antioxidation that protects our cells from damage. There's damage to the nerves, neurotoxicity, inhibition of growth, and some reproductive dysfunction. So, and we've studied mice, and you can see we study cells. So the big challenge that the medical field is faced with right now is taking this information and determining which of it may be relevant to humans. It seems that there's such a accumulation of bad news that's coming out of these studies. My sense is that most folks who look at that feel there's plastics are probably not good for our body. But we need to look at what's going on in humans. We'll look at a clinical and an epidemiologic study, and those are ones that'll tell us more. Do these laboratory studies translate to toxicity in humans? And that's where we're also learning more. This is what's different now than was even a year or two ago. On the left, you'll see, from the famous, our own New England Journal of Medicine, that they took a bunch of people who needed to have their carotid arteries reamed out because they were blocked. Some of them had microplastic in the material that was removed, and some of them didn't. So the folks with the orange line followed over about 3 years are the ones who had microplastic, and the folks with the blue line, they didn't have microplastic. And what they found is that over a period of about 3 years, the risk for heart attack, stroke, or death was 4.5 times greater with the microplastic. So about 20% of the folks with microplastics had a significant event or died, whereas only about 5% of those without microplastic died. So that's, I find, pretty compelling information that the microplastics are not a good thing, and they're probably affecting multiple organs in folks who have them. And then there was recently a big epidemiologic study, and these are tough to interpret, but basically they came to the conclusion, based on findings from around the world, that the dietary microplastic exposure is significantly associated with increased global cardiovascular disease burden. They were able to estimate what the dietary exposures were around the world in different countries and different places, and found an association with more cardiovascular disease in those countries and places where there was more microplastic in the food. So we have and their conclusion also, the growing health risks of microplastic pollution, and they supports the necessity for global efforts to reduce exposure. So we have folks now coming out with studies that are more directly focused on humans, leading us to feel increasingly that we should be doing something about limiting microplastics in the environment. And then the final conclusion of a study in Nature Medicine summarizing all of this is that despite their uncertainties, so I'm telling you that we're just beginning to see the tip of the iceberg of evidence. Despite that uncertainty, they say the negative impact of microplastics, MNPs, the N is for nanoplastic, the tiniest tiny particles, negative impact on the global environment and wildlife cannot be disputed. So that's the environment and wildlife. No question that there's problems there. But just based on that evidence, they say actions to reduce exposure and transition towards safer plastics are needed as soon as possible. So we have a lot of folks in the health and public health area who are speaking out and writing in prestigious journals that we should be attend to our microplastic problem as soon as possible. So PFAS is, we're just kind of just switching channels here a little bit to talk about PFAS. I think we're all sort of familiar with it. These are thousands of different chemicals, many of which have been shown to be toxic to humans and endocrine disruptors and affecting reproductive function and potentially carcinogenic. And studies are ongoing to determine which ones are the worst and what the problem is. It's a very challenging field to be working in, but the EPA has looked at all the evidence, and I think you know that they have said we cannot have this stuff in our drinking water except down to the 1 in a trillion or less. So there is an understanding that small amounts of this ingested over time can cause significant problems. So older turf, it has quite a substantial amount of PFAS on it because lubricants used in the production contain PFAS. Now, the manufacturers have actually taken this to heart, and they're trying to eliminate PFAS from the production process. And they can take away those that they know are there that have been intentionally added to lubricate it and say, okay, we'll use something else. But the machinery to make this stuff is complex. There are multiple machines, and they say it's going to be very, very difficult to weed out all of those unintentionally added PFAS. And they're working on figuring out how to do that. The Synthetic Turf Council, that represents all of the manufacturers, has not yet established a standard for acceptable trace levels of PFAS. They're working on a formalized testing protocol. And they said in California, maybe we can get to what we think are some very low levels by 2030, but not elimination of PFAS. So that's another reason for a moratorium is let's see how they do. Let's see if they're really making progress on getting rid of PFAS. It's very difficult to measure, and even getting an independent test doesn't necessarily mean you've got it all. So we need some time to let the industry see what they're going to do if we're considering an artificial turf field. So to kind of sum this up, why do we even care about artificial turf? I think you all know there are more playable hours than you can get on natural grass. You can play on it maybe a little better after rain, and it is better tolerant of heavy use, but it does have to be replaced about every 8 to 10 years. And that means 44,000 pounds of plastic just in the blades and stuff has to be put down and then pulled up 8 years later and trucked off to someplace where right now very little is recycled. And it's good. Maybe in years to come they'll figure out some way to do that. But right now we have 44,000 pounds of plastic just being dumped in landfills in many cases.
Hey, Roger, is that for a full size, like NFL size field? I don't know what
I,
all of
you
the
know,
fields that we consider are that big.
yeah, I can't tell you for sure. They're probably different sizes to those fields. I can check that out. I think it's really what I call. They said it was a standard football field, and I don't know if that's what a standard is, quite frankly. I'll find out.
Mhm.
Okay, so all the cons. We've covered microplastic, probably having adverse public health impacts, possible player exposure to PFAS. Whether there's exposure to microplasts on the field, nobody's really looked at that. It's going to be very hard to look at. Certainly possible that stuff that's broken down and stayed on the field and gotten down to the microplastic side could be got airborne and inhaled. Possible, certainly possible. There's this infill toxicity that it's still an issue, but people are working on it. There's toxic runoff from fields that hasn't really been all that well studied. And there's significant life cycle carbon emissions coming from the production of the field, production of the plastic, all the way back to the oil fields and beyond. And then if these are incinerated, there's even more carbon emissions that come out of this. And on a regular basis, with sun exposure, the blades also emit methane into the atmosphere. I haven't found a good number for how much, but it's been very clear that it emits some methane on a regular basis, especially when exposed to sun. You can't play on it in high heat. I think you're aware that the temperatures can get so high that people can get a second or third degree burn if they fall and stay down for a little while. So you have to be careful about that. As it gets hotter and hotter, we may find that even during our usual sports season, we're going to have those hot days where we can't even use the field. And the
Hey,
replacement every year.
Roger,
Yes.
sorry, what do you mean by high heat?
The temperature, say, of 90 degrees and above,
Okay.
potentially. And I'm not sure, you have to actually measure the temperature on the field, and that's the best way to manage this. And our health department has done that in the past
Mhm.
to measure the temperature and determine when it's too high for somebody to play on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know, in terms of the pro about there being more playable hours, is that after adjusting for having to detract that you can't play on it on hot days? Do you
Uh,
know what I mean? Or
yes, because most of the playable hours in most places that use this in towns and for schools is in the fall and spring and
okay,
early summer.
yeah,
Now schools are shut down and when everybody's on summer vacation, kids teams, my understanding is that it may be off. So there are people who would like to use those fields for recreation, and we have to be careful not to allow that. If there's a day camp or someplace that wants to get some kids on there just to kind of kick the ball around, we have to be careful about that. But the playable hours, there's no question that during the season, the playable hours are substantially more for a field of plastic than for natural grass.
Yeah, and I see Tom had his hand up again
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah. Going back to Gillette Stadium, they play the product they have is a product called Field Turf, right? And Field Turf, I just read it, claims in July of 2025 that there are no PFAs on their product.
Yeah, what they probably mean no intentionally added PFAs, and based on one testing protocol, they were unable to find them. I think what the experts say is we don't really know what an adequate testing protocol is. PFAs are thousands of chemicals. There are different ways to test for the class of chemical and specific chemicals. Folks who are concerned about this are skeptical.
Yeah, I will jump in. I think most of you know that I spent my career doing hazardous waste site assessment, and these protocols for testing PFAS are still developing. Regulatory agencies are still thinking, Mass DEP and US EPA have been leapfrogging each other in standards for groundwater. So it's a field that's still really in its infancy to understand these things. And as Roger said, there are thousands of them. Some of the standards look at total PFAS. Nobody's really testing for, as far as I know, for all however many thousand there are. So it's a complicated business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 1 part per trillion, just for context, is about the size of a square inch of land in the state of Maine. So, that gives you some sense of the difficulty of understanding how to find these things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wonder how much that would cost if you wanted to buy that square inch of land to make. I can't do too much with it, I guess. Okay, so let's just quickly to sum up, why a moratorium as opposed to a complete ban immediately? We need to confirm and fully evaluate the health risks. We need to give the manufacturers some time. I mean, see if they can eliminate PFAS and we can test for it. There are some new hybrid turf products that are out there. I think for the Olympics, the Japanese have found an alternative form of material to use as the so-called yarn that's in these things. And they claim, I think they're going to have that, use all of that for the Olympics. Don't know too much about it. There's another kind of hybrid turf that has some grass, but much less synthetic product. Apparently very expensive and used only in a few places. But let's wait and see. Maybe some of these things are going to be great alternatives, but we need some time. And capitalism moves things forward fast if there's money in it. And so in 3 years, we might be able to see that there's an alternative material that'll give us the playable hours and is not as toxic. We need to, the state is acting on artificial turf. There's at least one bill that would ban artificial turf. I might kind of doubt it's going to go through this session, but the state is concerned about it. So we need to keep, we would be putting something in that the state bans, probably not such a great idea. And finally, I mean, as Donna mentioned, really our objective here is to allow the town to take this really comprehensive look at what are the needs for the field and what are the options for different kinds of turf. And we need to get input from all of our stakeholders, just the average citizen whose public health might be affected, experts in environmental health, as well as the usual folks from the town and from the schools and from Parks and Rec who have an interest in making space for kids to play. So we're back here. Health concerns. Tien's going to talk a little about cost, I think. We've covered a bit about environment, and that is the end of my story. Are there questions?
I see Brinley's got her hand up, and I've got a question as well. Brinley?
Yeah, I have a bunch of thoughts that can wait until you guys are totally done, unless you want them now. But the one thing I wanted to bring up before we moved on, because I feel like it might be important with the playable hours question, is that I don't know if you remember when they were going over the presentation and when the school puts in their presentation, a large part of the effect of grass versus turf in terms of playing hours is because to save the turf, to save the grass, they don't put lighting on grass fields. And here in New England, we're still playing when it gets dark at 4 o'clock at night. We play easily on those fields through December. And track people go all winter outside. So I do think that it's misleading for them to say that we only lose hours because of weather. I do feel like the lighting is something that probably is not a bad thing to bring up during the presentation, just to say, one of the reasons that playing hours is affected is because of lighting, and there's zero reason for us to not have lighting. If playing time doesn't start until school is out at 2:30 or 3 o'clock, and they can only play until 4 because there's no lights, it's not like the grass is actually getting so much playtime that it's messing it up. So I just wanted to throw that out there for a
Maybe you
moment.
can educate me. Is there some evidence that lights on grass field damage the grass? Is that what you were saying?
No, they have not provided any evidence that it is a problem for it. They say, so this, I believe this comes from the fact that an enormous amount of the homework that is done around this is done where they have longer light and longer playing seasons than we do.
Yeah.
And so in those areas, they don't light grass fields because they don't want kids playing on them until, 10 o'clock at night.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And so New England just isn't like that. We could light that field and still stop at a reasonable hour of 7. And it wouldn't actually, it would give us 2 more hours of playing time or even 3 more hours of playing time without overusing the field.
Well, that's, from my perspective, that's another reason to have this conversation with a task force that includes people who know all about playable hours, know how many playable hours we need, know everything we can possibly do to increase or decrease. And you should be on that task force, I think, because this is a very,
that is exactly my point. And I think that's a point that is worthy of being in the presentation.
There are ways to adjust and expand playable hours without necessarily putting in artificial turf, and we need to be able to kind of figure those out, or at least take a look at them.
That exact sentence right there.
Good.
So I actually had 2 questions, and then I'll go to Cindy and then Tom. And I know you said TN had cost information you wanted to present as well. My first question goes back to something that Donna had said in her introductory remarks, that we have time to have this moratorium because we don't have any turf fields in the budget until at least the 27 budget. I had thought that one of the drivers for this petition article coming up in the fall town meeting was that someone had seen turf field budget money in next year's budget. So if someone could clarify that, and maybe I just heard incorrectly. And then the second question was, and maybe you said this in the presentation, I just didn't catch it, but in terms of if the moratorium is approved and we have time to have this fuller townwide discussion, and folks used the term task force, are you guys, is that part of your proposal, or just recommendations that a task force specifically be convened to look at this, as opposed to, because if we don't do something specific like that and just say, yeah, these are the people that should think about it, nothing's necessary, the conversation isn't necessarily going to happen.
Yeah,
those
I
are
can just
2 questions. Yeah,
pass the first question on to other folks, but just quickly, just because of the timing in terms of putting together this article, it is specifically on a advisory for a 3-year moratorium. So the town, I don't think town meeting is going to be able to vote on the formation of a task force, but we're going to put that forward as one reasonable thing that could be done to have this conversation. I think maybe in the future, if this doesn't work, we should put that on the warrant. The other guys can respond to that and the question about the timing of the budget issue. I know Tien or
So yeah, so the field is budgeted in the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan, for fiscal year 27 for the latest 5-year plan for 2.2 million. we've subsequently heard from town officials and from the school committee that that's probably going to be pushed back, but they haven't decided yet. So it's in the CIP, but there's no money certain for it right now.
Okay, and just to clarify, the fiscal 27 budget, actually, the period begins next July 1st, halfway through 26.
Right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, sooner
I,
than
I
like.
can also say that I think with the understanding that they're going to be asking for feasibility money, and the new stuff that we've learned about the feasibility money for Memorial, and the fact that everything is still hot after the override, that and now that this has been brought up, I think that they're probably going to try to figure out better funding sources for it, before it comes back up again. But it is a very desperate need, and so for sure it's not going to wait forever. And for sure, if we don't have this conversation, they'll be asking for turf field.
I just want to apologize. I had serious connection problems. I just am back on in this conversation. I want to say that we don't know when it's coming up in the budget, and that's part of the reason for the conversation, just to take a pause and to consider all options. Town meeting already appropriated $240,000 for a field feasibility study, and we don't have a report on that. We don't know how much of that money was spent. We don't know how it was spent. We do know that at a meeting at which a few people were at, that it was said the athletic department and the DPW, on the basis of whatever that's being done, are recommending a turf field. So that's also, we want to get in front of this, and we want to have this thoughtful conversation with health and environmental experts that's been missing prior to it showing up as where we have to be in a defensive posture on the town meeting floor. And we think it's reasonable. We look forward to the healthiest alternative for our kids. And Tian, thank you for the update. And Rick, did you share what you wanted to share?
No, I didn't.
No, we haven't even gotten to Rick yet, and I see, or to TN's, and we've got four folks with their hands up. So I guess I would ask
Okay,
the
again, apologies.
presenters at this point, do you want to continue to take questions, or do you want to hold those until you can get other materials presented to us?
I briefly think we want to bring the other materials to you. And Tian, do you have anything you want to say about the finances of a field? I also want to insert that community preservation funds could be used for the construction or the rehabilitation of a natural field. So that is an important source of money that would be available. So Tian, do you have anything you want to add about finances?
Before Tian, I'm on the Community Preservation Committee. I just want to emphasize that CPA funds cannot be used for turf fields. So that's
exactly right. I hope I said natural grass.
Well, you did, but you didn't specifically say that, oh, well, could we use a CPA for a turf field instead? No, we can't. So,
and then actually, if you permit me to break our order, I know Martin said that he might have to leave early, and he is one of those with his hand up. So, Martin, I would defer if you have something that you're anxious to get asked right away. Feel free.
I think it fits in right now, if I could. At the joint meeting with the Open Space Committee and the Concon make what I thought was a rather strange proposal, that each particular landowner be responsible for making the moral and ethical decision about artificial turf. So that Rec and Park would make its own decision, Board of Select Board might make its own decision, the school committee make its own decision for its land. Maybe even the soccer club could make its own field with its own policy. So you basically get 4 or 5 different policies around town with different moral standards that give different results, and it seems to make no sense to me. So I think the question is, what is the advantage of a town-wide study committee versus individual department study committees?
Well, and other towns have done this. The town of Sharon has a committee that was constituted by the Board of Selectmen that includes representatives from all of the significant bodies in the town. I believe the town of Brookline also did the same thing. It wasn't just a task force from like the school department or the rec department didn't just have their own task force. It really was a town-wide task force. So once again, we're not inventing the wheel. We're just asking for something that's reasonable and I think relatively modest. The town of Wellesley also has used the community preservation funds for the rehabilitation of a natural grass field. So I think your point is well taken, and it's really concerning to have like 4 different policies on fields within one town. They keep saying one Natick. Well, really? But anyway, thank you so much, Martin.
Yeah. All right. So let's let Tien and Rick do some presenting, and then we'll take questions. And Cindy and Tom and Pat, appreciate your patience.
I'll be very quick. I won't show any slides or anything. My main point is that turf fields are about 2 to 3 times more expensive than natural grass fields, especially when you use organic management of the natural grass fields, because as time goes on, the soil gets more and more nutrient rich and you have to use less fertilizer, etc. And so one of the things that's driving this cost up for artificial turf is this replacement every 8 to 10 years. And so in 22, after a Memorial Field by the high school was 9 years old, we replaced it and it was $550,000. That's without recycling. And so these things are more expensive now. They're probably up to 700,000 and then recycling maybe 800,000. So every 8 to 10 years for each field. So besides all the health and environmental risks, it's expensive, very expensive.
That 2 to 3 times, are you saying that that's a lifetime cost comparison compared to natural grass? Does that include the annual upkeep and so forth?
Includes maintenance, replacement, everything. So this was a study done by Turi at UMass Lowell. They were looking at or they quoted another study that looked at 16-year life cycle costs. And so that's based on those and that study.
And does that include the disposal cost of the material as well?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would make it even worse. Okay.
If I'd add just really quickly a couple of thoughts to what others have said, which is, in the year plus that I've been looking at this and watching Roger's response to increasing amounts of study, I've grown more and more concerned about microplastics. And that was not my concern a year ago when we were talking about this. And Roger has brought that to the front. So I really appreciate the work that Roger has done and that Donna has added a moral dimension to this question, which was very important in Wayland when they passed their moratorium. And Donna has spoken with Paul Dale over there, who both provided a handout that they used at their town meeting and the text of his remarks, which are compelling. And I'll just quote one sentence from this, which I think is, for me, really rings loudly. He says, "We encourage our kids to recycle, to avoid plastic straws, to not litter, to compost, to participate in Earth Day events. We've banned plastic checkout bags. The synthetic field would be a huge step backwards to our environmental stewardship." And he says, we think globally about climate change and the environment, but we are called upon to act locally. And this is important to our collective psyche. This is a community-wide issue when we're talking about microplastics and PFAS. and the future of our children. So in spite of my athletic background, I see little reason to prioritize expensive turf fields with all of their problems and all the potential risk versus grass fields. And other towns in Massachusetts have already, walked away from grass fields. Half a dozen of them, at least, at this point that we know of, have rejected grass fields as an alternative.
Thanks,
Thank
Rick.
you.
Let's swing back to some questions then, Cindy.
So my question was almost identical to Doug's comment about the task force. So I guess at this point I would say, as you move forward in the presentations, it would be helpful to see for you to share a vision of how the task force might come into being. I know it's not part of the thing on the warrant, but I don't know how these things happen in the town, but or maybe you could share a little bit now of how do you see going from, say it's approved, then how does that happen? And what can you do when your presentation just to sort of set that up, or apart from your presentation?
Great question.
I just want to add here that I've been in conversation closely with the moderator, and I asked about adding a task force, and it was advised not to do it into the warrant article. So there was some thought given to that, but I see going forward that if the advisory passes, that we would hopefully use persuasion to encourage the Board of Select people to appoint a task force that widely represents the town. And again, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We can look to the town of Sharon. We can look to other towns who have done this.
Yeah, that would hopefully also address the point that Martin had made of having independent decisions just smacks of different sets of factual information at the hands of all of those different groups, which makes no sense at all.
And confusion for parents of like, okay, maybe it's okay for my kid to be on this field and not that field. That to me is, lots of confusion getting added in.
Yeah. Tom.
This is just a recommendation to Roger. The presentation, I would strongly recommend somebody, when you present this, like the town meeting, is going to come up like me and say, hey, field turf at Patriots Gillette Stadium, no P of it, no P of it. That's what they say. And you came up with a reason why there may be some PVAC. So I recommend you put something in there to say there are products that claim that there is no PFAS, and we have concerns about something like that.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, head that off at the pass if it's widely known. Yeah. I see.
I just add, Doug, that the NFL Players Association has long been staunchly against artificial turf.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's an ongoing issue between the Players Association and two stadiums, Green Bay and I think Philadelphia, are now hybrid, which is 90 to 95% grass and 5% plastic to sort of sturdy up the grass. And these are in difficult climates. So
interesting. Pat, I know you had your hand up earlier, but lowered it. Did you have a question, or shall we go to Bradley?
I was just, it's been answered. What are some of the other towns doing about this?
Great. Okay. Brinley and then Donna.
If I have like a whole page of stuff, so if somebody's quicker than me and wants to go first, that's fine. But I would love to go over my thoughts.
Well, so Donna is one of the presenters. Did you want to speak before Brinley, or just hear her thoughts and questions first?
I'll be quick. I want to just say this before anybody leaves or has to leave early, that we are also doing a forum on October 16th at the First Congregational Church from 7 to 8:30, and it's a public forum to encourage discussion on this topic. People come with their thoughts, ideas, and we are going to serve cider from Dow's Apple Orchard and some donuts, and we would love to hear. So please pass the word in whatever way you can. And I hope I didn't interrupt your train of thought, Brinley.
Will the town be advertising that as well, or are you just using social media and word of mouth?
Do you all think I should have the town advertise it?
If they're willing to on their communications page, I would think the more you get the word out, the better, but it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that
That is the
also
last Thursday before town meeting, so there might be a FinCom meeting. I mean, I would like to think that they're all completely done by then because the book has to be in our hands by then, but you know.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd encourage you to reach out to Jay Paddock and ask if he may say no, I don't know, but
well, and we have other like the First Congregational Church has offered to pass the word among their bodies. So I mean, they're not endorsing it, but I mean, I will use social media. I'll use, I think, whoever is willing to advertise it. But thank you for that suggestion, Doug.
Great. Well, Brinley.
Again, Brinley, I hope I didn't interrupt your thoughts.
No, she's got them all written down. Brinley's organized.
Very organized.
Yeah, I do have them all written down, and that's all great.
Perfect. Thank you.
So my questions are, I can do them all at once for you, or if you want to stop or however, and you know, I'm always happy to give you guys these in writing. The first one I wrote down is I've asked this to myself every time I've watched your presentation. So I don't know if it's just me or if it is something that you should be prepared to answer, because my guess is if I've thought it every time, that somebody in town meeting might also think it and ask it. But understanding how much the town spent on PFAS filtration and that relevance to the perspective. I'm not saying that should be in the presentation. I'm saying I think that's something that you guys should be prepared to answer, or at least prepared to rephrase how that question should be asked if someone asks it, so that when it comes up, it gets answered in a way that makes sense, right? To the perspective. So that's just one thought on that, is to make sure that the monetary homework has been done about what the town has spent for PFAS filtration already. In terms of I'm sorry, what?
I think
that wasn't for
just
me?
an Eric comment. Yep.
Okay. So this is another one that's come up every single time you guys have presented, and I keep forgetting to mention it. So the cosmetics industry is $1 billion plus industry. So is the cleaning supplies, detergent, laundry detergent, etc. industry. There are tons of skin studies available about lotions and sunscreens and all of that. I'm not saying that should be put in there in the presentation, but I'm hoping, this is the second part of that you guys can put together a resources page to both print and email to town meeting members. And I do believe that skin studies, you know, we've really changed a lot about that, right? We've had a huge conversation about sunscreen and the sunscreen that happens into our bodies and how the sunscreen comes off into waters. And so there really is a solid basis of research around skin absorption. And therefore, I think it's another great reason why we should hang out for a minute and have this conversation, because it hasn't been done enough for the PFAS for us to understand what it is, right? When the kids skin their knees and all that kind of stuff. We just haven't done enough for them to determine if it's a problem. And so that's why I think it's good to wait. I wasn't able to watch the whole presentation on my phone as I'm working. Did you guys have a heat picture in there? And if not, I feel like that's also something that should be on the resources page, because I think the heat pictures that are available I think you used one in the very first presentation to the Conservation Commission, where you showed the different temperatures side by side, the turf, the grass, the sidewalk, et cetera. I think those are really emotional pictures. And I think that we should find some way, if it doesn't fit because of timing into the presentation, and that's why it was one of the ones that was lost, I think it needs to be definitely put into the resources page, or maybe it needs to be blown up on a 11 by 12 and put in the front of the lobby. Like, I think we should probably have front of the lobby materials for the time when this comes up, so that there's some dramatic emotional effect to the point of this. Not saying, oh my God, not fear mongering type of stuff. Just look here, this is another reason why we should wait, because we really haven't done this. I mentioned already the lighting, but I really think that the lighting keeps coming up, and I feel like it keeps getting left out. And it gets talked about a lot. It was talked about in the presentation. It's talked about consistently, is the lighting. And so I do think that that somehow that needs to be in there as well. Oh, Tien, when you do the money, I feel like this is something that keeps getting missed, and it's going to be in what the schools say. And it was in that design study. With each increase in better quality, safe turf materials, the turf price goes up significantly, right? If we look at crumb rubber versus the cocoa fill versus any of the other ones, and they put that in the study, and it's talked about a lot. So there again, we're adding to the money, so that, town meeting is all about the money. Even though it's about the emotion, it's definitely all about the money. So it's definitely something that we should have in there that mentions this is another reason why we need to have this conversation, because if we figure out that we want to be better, then we're really talking about significant money. And then also, I think you guys should be ready to have all of the finances available for the recent high school field replacement, and understanding that even though it's the grass full part is every 10 to 12 years, there are also more frequent infill fillings. And I think that's another thing to drive home, that it's not just one and done and we don't touch it again for 12 years. There is definitely monetary investment in a turf field as well. And I think that those are the types of points that town meeting needs to hear, because again, we're about the money. I think somebody should reach out probably with a FOIA, because it might be the only way to get it in time. Maybe just emailing Matt Gillis will get it. But I really do think we need to understand how the money worked for the design study. What was spent, what exactly was in the RFP, RFQ, whichever one they used. My thought is it's going to be hard to get that, because there was probably already a slant in how they asked for the design study to work. Meaning there probably wasn't clarification specifically that says, hey, make sure you're really evaluating equally both options in this feasibility for a field in this space. Because
when you say design study, do you mean the feasibility study? Or
yes, the feasibility study was also for design. The point was, what can go here? Where can it go? How can it work? And if you look at, I still have those pages from going to that. And if you look at that, it's very clear that they were anticipating, expecting, and looking forward to a turf field, because the whole point of the design, there's no talking about how a grass field would differ. It's all about, here's where the wetland marks are. Here's what the rules are for wetlands. Here's how we'd have to move this field around, because it has to go on a diagonal so that we hit the marks for conservation and everything that goes along with turf and wetlands, and how you build. And the whole presentation was and the whole design of the field that they presented in that limited meeting, which has not gone to school committee. So I want to be very clear, this is not something that the school committee has already discussed or seen in presentation, but it is something that has been presented to the small group, as you guys know, because we were all there together. But if you look at those pages, they come across to me as very one-sided and not as what all of the options are. And so I think us understanding exactly how the money was spent, what was in the RFQ, understanding all of that, I think is important, because I will not be surprised if that question comes up. In fact, I won't be surprised if David Coffey is one of the people who even asks that question. Again, town meeting's about the money. So since we did approve a significant portion of money for this feasibility study for that specific field, I think that it's important that we have an understanding of how that money was spent, so that if questions come up, you guys are able to, help answer that, to make sure that it's like, oh, well, we don't have those numbers right now, right? We can get you those numbers. We don't have them right now. I think that's a poor excuse for communication at town meeting. And so I want to make sure that somebody already has those numbers pulled up for how that worked. Last field displacement, I already said that. Oh, and then, so I've been bringing it up. I know also a FinCom member brought it up, but I do wonder if having sole focus without mention of player safety is necessarily smart. I do think that there should be in the presentation one or two sentences that just mention, there is a conversation out there right now that's very strong and really happening about actual player safety on the field. I think that needs to come in the conversation somewhere, because it's a real conversation, right? The NFL Players Union has been advocating for turf for over a decade. The FIFA World Cup, there are several professional football stadiums, pro football stadiums that are switching over to grass for next year for the FIFA World Cup while they're here, because they have a determination that it has to be on natural grass. It levels the playing field, and there's statistically, researchly proven information that there are less injuries on natural grass, especially season-ending type of injuries. I realize that's a different level of play, and I'm not really sure how to put that in there, but I definitely think that that's one of the things that should be in the presentation, to say, we're focused on this, but there's also this issue, and this is another issue that makes it a good reason to take a pause and do some homework. Okay.
Wow. Cool.
Thanks, guys.
I know Cindy had her hand up, but so does, and I want to give
I
any
defer
of the
to Tien.
presenters an opportunity to respond to any of that before. Lots of good feedback there, Brinley. So Tien, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Brinley, as usual, for all that great feedback. A couple of things on the RFP. We do have the RFP. It was very general. I can send it to you. It just said we want to, basically we want a design for a field, and didn't say much more than that. I think most of the slanting was done in verbal conversations. But in any case, we have that. We don't have how much they spent, but I'll try to get that from Matt and maybe do a FOIA request if he's not forthcoming with that. But thanks for that encouragement on doing that and reminder. I did want to also answer
assistant
Tom about them saying there's we have PFAS free artificial turf, and so there's two articles that have been in newspapers, one in Philly and one in New Hampshire, where they've claimed PFAS free artificial turf, and they sent people to independently test it, and there was PFAS in it. So they'll say all sorts of things, but those are two big things that were in the news about that. And in terms of, so I'm jumping all over the place, but in terms of playable hours, Springfield and another town, what is it? Marblehead uses mainly grass fields. They do have a couple of artificial turf fields, but they get 1,800 hours off of some of their grass fields. And so in the presentation that the school gave, they were saying like 600 hours, 800 hours. And so it's not all on, football and lacrosse. They do have phys ed, but they have soccer and they have adult soccer and they have high school soccer. So especially if you have lighting, like Brinley said, you can get a lot of hours off of natural grass, and they've been there's these people who specialize in high use natural grass. So I know I was all over the place, but I just wanted to address some of those.
Great, thanks. And Donna, let me also just give you an opportunity to respond, and then we'll take Cindy's comment question. Donna. Maybe she's probably.
I was muted. Once again, Brinley, your comments are outstanding, and I wondered if you wouldn't mind emailing them to us, like just briefly, because I just think they're really important. In the infill on these fields, Wellesley, for example, has never used a crumb rubber field. When they made a decision to use artificial turf in a few of their fields, they made a decision not to use crumb rubber. And Natick has never made a commitment like that. And you're right, it would be more money, but it could be an important commitment, right? Health matters. And an interesting question came up when we met with the Park and Recreation Department. Somebody asked about the PFAS level in Dug Pond. I have a question out to the Board of Health about that, because it may experience runoff from Memorial Field, and how to be like really have everyone in town dislike you by finding out there's PFAS in the only pond to swim in, right? But it's not an insignificant question to learn about runoff also from these fields. But all of your points are just very, very good. And the injury point, especially. My nephew was captain of his college football team, and he would say he hated turf because of the injuries. There were different kinds of injuries and that they were more serious. So thank you, Brinley, so much.
Great. Cindy, and then Pat.
Yeah, two really quick things. Roger, first of all, I put something in the chat just to you. I saw a little typo weird thing in one of the slides.
Thanks.
And the other comment is, I heard Brinley just use the word turf, and I don't think you did in the presentation, but my dad was in the sod business, and the name of the company had the word turf in it. And so they were growing grass and selling it rolled up. And so if you're going to refer to turf, you should use the word artificial turf, I think, just to be clear, because for me, grass and turf is, whatever, sod, whatever. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, that naming has always been confusing to me as well. Pat.
Yeah, I was just going to comment and ask a question, I think of Roger maybe or Tian, in my unsuccessful bid to oppose the expansion of coal Northfield and make it artificial turf. Got voted down town meeting on that one. I think it was a study, maybe it was a dozen years ago. The women's soccer teams had an incredible increase in cancer, especially their goalies, because they spent so much time, on the turf and defending the goal and, breathing in and everything, all the particles, nasty stuff. And I was just curious if you'd seen or heard about that study.
I have not. So it sounds like something we should look into.
I can add that Wellesley College uses natural grass for their soccer fields, and a lot of places use natural grass for soccer. Of course, they don't have a football team. They have a big artificial turf field, and they use it for field hockey, but it's an Olympic quality turf field. I can't get a price on how much that costs them. I'm sure it's a bloody fortune.
Mhm. And it has much less infill, and there's less shedding of the blades, according to the stuff that I read. It's not eliminated, but it sheds less. So you're right about, you can get some higher quality products that are probably better at probably a higher price, and we can't afford it.
Yeah. That point that Pat mentioned about cancer in women's goalies, just a lot of your presentation, Roger, about PFAS and the microplastics just kind of getting released into the general environment. I mean, maybe you said it explicitly, or maybe everybody will make the connection, but maybe just to emphasize, well, the people closest to the field itself, in other words, the children playing on it, is it reasonable to say that they are at the most risk, as opposed to just the general environmental introduction of these materials?
Yeah, I mean, nobody has really studied exposure to microplastics on the field. Remember, sometimes these blades come off, and they may be. Oh,
no, go ahead. It's just
yeah. The blades come off. They may not be quite microplastic size when they come off, and then in their journey they break down, and that's where the microplastic seems to be coming from out in the environment. And so nobody's really studied that. So I'd make an assumption that it's certainly possible, but without data, I'm hesitant to at least state it in any kind of definitive way.
Okay.
And in terms of crumb rubber, I mean, there are all these terrible chemicals and stuff in crumb rubber. There are two studies, one from the federal government, the EPA, and one from California, both of which looked at measurements of toxins absorbed by the body to the best of their ability, and they've declared that crumb rubber is safe for use on fields for kids. Now, Sarah may be able to comment on how I think they measured a variety of stuff in urine and really tried to look at biological exposure and really thought about it. They were very lengthy studies. I haven't read them page for page, but there's so that's one reason we've kind of pulled away from making a big deal about crumb rubber, because people are going to push back with those two studies that say, hey, it looks like it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't seen those particular studies, but knowing that kind of work, it is very rigorous. And Roger, I'm sure you've seen these things when every single site that we worked at that was beyond a pretty minor level, we had to go through a very detailed risk assessment. And it gets into how would somebody be exposed? Well, they might get it on their forearms for 3 hours a day, and there's this many square inches of skin on the average size person. It's mind-blowingly detailed. So as I say, I have not seen the studies that you're talking about, but they are pretty rigorous. The other thing I will throw in, and again, Roger, you would know more about this than I would, but I found it interesting that this was a study particularly looking at women. Just broadly speaking, my understanding is that in the medical world, lots of research historically has been done on men and less research specifically focusing on women. So I think that's interesting to hear that. I have not seen that study, so I can't comment on it, but it's worth saying that sometimes it turns out that women's bodies work a little differently. So
is that true? I've noticed that. The medical field is still trying to catch up, but I think we're going to have a little bit of a setback under the current administration.
So I see Pat and Cindy have their hands up. Pat?
Yes, I was going to ask one. Perhaps you covered it, Roger or Tian, but my understanding is when the temperature is up to about 90 degrees, most artificial turf fields are unplayable, basically.
Yeah,
they're too hot.
I have a slide on that. I'll look back at that and look at the temperature comparisons and see what we have. I think that sounds about right. And I've got a slide that I can pull in and maybe shorten and get in there. But
so with climate change, we're going to have a lot of unplayable fields during.
My concern about a big deal about that is that most of the pushback is like, well, it hardly ever gets up to 90 in the fall and the spring when we're actually using the field. So who cares about the daycare, the day programs in the summer, and the little kids who want to use it? We don't care about them. So, anyway, I do.
Well, and there's currently no warning system for the turf when the turf is too hot.
Yeah.
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 Cindy and then Brinley, and then perhaps we might start to bring it to a close. But Cindy?
Yeah, this is more of just a curiosity question. It's not really related to the moratorium, but um, in terms of maintaining artificial turf, is there any sort of vacuuming maintenance that can be done to get the little bits away from the field before they get on somebody's shoes or clothes and go away that way?
To my knowledge, it's not done. I had kind of thought about that myself. Tim, you may know more.
I'm just, yeah, they should be vacuuming it, but there's the infill needs to be there to cushion the
Right.
athletes.
Yeah.
So when they fall and it gets in their shoes and
Yeah.
it's, it's you can't stop that.
That's you're right. The problem is if you vacuumed it, you'd pull up the infill and have to replace it. I think
Yeah.
you have to have
Like
a very selective vacuum somehow.
so you see like on the NFL fields at our artificial turf, when they slide on it, you see this black sort of thing. I don't know if you watch football, but anyway, you'll see it, and those are really well kept fields, right? But they just need that to cushion
Wow.
the
I thought it was just to help with the officiating. Man, was he in bounds or not?
Well, and I think the cushioning, or is it the G-force, needs to be tested several times a year. I'm not sure how often Natick tests it, but the cushioning lessens as the field gets older, and that's an issue. I'm also not sure of the drainage. For example, pet waste doesn't drain. I don't mean to be gross, but I have two dogs, but pet waste doesn't drain on an artificial turf field the way it does on natural grass. So, not to be graphic, but you need to disinfect these fields periodically, right? We don't want our children like playing in pet waste,
Oh, God.
animal poop, or whatever. And I don't have any idea of what the maintenance program for the artificial turf fields is.
Well, one of the things that has to be done is that the infill, whether it's crumb rubber or other, has to be replaced depending on usage and weather and storm water drainage and so forth. Has to be replaced every 1 to 3 years, hundreds of pounds of it. And the other piece of maintenance is that it has to be redistributed because imagine, a football game, for instance, where a lot of the movement is in the same areas, and it after a while, then the infill gets moved out of those areas to other areas, and you can see that very clearly at Cole, which really isn't used for football but soccer, where if you walk along the field, you can see areas that are really dark and black, and then other areas that are slightly greener, faded green because the field's very old. So there is ongoing maintenance just to have the field play correctly. Never mind removing pet waste and using whatever it takes to cleanse the field. So there's definite maintenance in there, and there are costs associated with it.
Good points, Rick. Yeah, let's take Brinley and Bev, and then we'll wrap up and close out because I will have to end the recording momentarily. Brinley?
Yeah. So two things about that. One, when they talk about the fact that it's later in the afternoon and the heat doesn't matter, one of the counter argument to their counter argument is that actually one of the things that they're interested is being able to have more daytime play. They want to be able to rent fields out. Soccer wants to be able to use them during the day. Cole, for example, if I'm not misremembering, would need to be fact checked on this, but there are teams in Framingham that come use Cole all the time, and they use it during the day. There are men's teams there, and so there is still an interest. One of the interests that they state is that they actually want to be able to use it more during the daytime. So they're kind of wrong in saying that it doesn't matter, because it does matter. And then the other thing is, again, the higher the use, the more we use, which is an argument that they say for natural grass, the more the artificial turf needs to be maintained. So if both fields with increased use also take increased maintenance, it kind of means that we really should have a side-by-side comparison of that for playable hours if we're doing a cost comparison analysis. Again, town meeting. And I'm pretty sure that hasn't actually been done. So there's another reason why I think that the moratorium is a great idea, because that question certainly should be fleshed out and presented when it comes to which way we want to do fields.
Good points. Bev.
Just going back to some of the climate issues, I think some of this was mentioned in the presentation, that the creation of the artificial turf is really bad for carbon emissions and climate. I think, and I don't know the answer to this, that the grass actually has the opposite effect, that it absorbs some carbon, but I don't know the answer to that. So somebody might want to look into that and do that comparison. But just since we're trying to promote climate stewardship in the town, and that's been a clear priority for the town, that's another factor.
Yeah. Over time, it is true the cumulative impact of natural grass over maybe the 10-year period is to actually pull down some CO2 from the air. So there's a negative effect. Initially, there is some methane that's also released from the decay of the material that's used to maintain the field, but that gets balanced out once the grass gets well grown and you have enough time. It does bring down CO2, and so it's got a negative effect as opposed to the positive effect of the artificial turf.
Great. Yeah, another good point. So thank you, everybody. I see both Brinley, as usual, has put a bunch of links in the chat, and Tien just put a couple in, and those will get added to the description section when we get the video posted later today.
And I would just like to thank you and Doug, and especially Martin. I can't believe you're here, Martin. And we're all holding you close for your healing and your wellness. And we just appreciate this opportunity to talk about Article 33. And please reach out to me or to any of us who have spoken today if you have further questions. And I put the forum, the information is in the group chat. And before we close off, because I think Doug is leading us that way, on another matter, I want to tell you that there's going to be a No Kings rally on Saturday, October 18th from 11 to 1. And I said this at the beginning, I am aware that it's going to conflict a little bit with our remembrance of Jane Conaway, but I'm also thinking that how wonderful to come and hold a sign for a beautiful world in celebration of her life too, and then make your way over to Pumpkin Pine Lane to honor her life. So in a perfect world, there would have been no conflict, but in some ways, it's kind of nice. Again, thank you so much for giving us a chance to talk about Article 33.
Yeah, well, we appreciate your coming, and hopefully some of the feedback has been helpful to you.
Well, Doug, if I could add to Donna's sort of to-dos, and we'll mention these later, but she already mentioned the meeting, the public meeting at the First Church on the 16th. We would love to have people attend, as well as we'll notify you if Doug can help us do this when this article is going to come up at town meeting, because we are going to need people to stand up in the public and comment on this however you wish. We're up against a lot in this. One of the problems is operational budgets don't really provide very well for taking care of grass fields properly. We have a great turf manager. He doesn't have the help he needs. That's a challenge. The other is, to Brenley's issue of renting, Rec and Park doesn't have the manpower to supervise even the known groups that come in from Framingham and use Cole Center all day on Sunday of men and beat up the field. We're not getting any money from them at all, or at least we weren't when I last checked. And, the signage issue. So we're up against a lot here, and we really need everybody's support, and we really appreciate it. So thank you again.
Yeah. And to the point of when it will come up in town meeting, that's a good segue. Just very briefly, next week, we really do take a deeper dive into the full town meeting warrant. Both Jeff Alderson, the moderator, and Todd Gillenwater, FinCom chair, will join us again walk in depth through the warrant. And as meeting progresses and articles potentially get shifted as to which nights, we will do our best to keep folks informed there. So I'm going to turn the recording off at this point. And then let's see. I was going to turn it off till there we go.